There's still work to do, but we are on the cusp of a historic trade agreement. Indeed, some call it the mother of all deals. One that would create a market of 2 billion people, accounting for almost a quarter of global GDP. And crucially, that would provide a first-mover advantage for Europe, with one of the world's fastest growing and most dynamic continents. Europe wants to do business with the growth centers of today and the economic powerhouses of this century, from Latin America to the Indo-Pacific and far beyond. Europe will always choose the world, and the world is ready to choose Europe.
In exactly 48 hours, 340 million Europeans will lose access to X forever. No appeal, no way back. Right now, at this very moment, Elon Musk is executing a complete digital blackout across every single European Union nation. But this isn't about App Store politics or content moderation disputes anymore. This is about the moment the richest man on Earth decided that if Europe won't give him access to Greenland's $25 trillion worth of rare earth minerals, then Europe doesn't deserve to exist in the digital age. Ursula von der Leyen thought she was negotiating with a tech CEO. She was actually facing down American resource extraction backed by presidential power. And what Musk just did in response to her refusal has sent the entire European Commission into absolute freefall. Starlink satellites over Europe went dark 6 hours ago. The European Commission believed they understood the situation. They had dealt with aggressive American tech companies before. They had fined Google billions. They had forced Apple to change its App Store policies. They had made Meta restructure its entire privacy framework. So when Elon Musk started making demands about mineral rights in Greenland, Ursula von der Leyen assumed this would follow the same pattern. Musk would threaten. Brussels would hold firm, and eventually Musk would compromise because no CEO walks away from 340 million users and a market worth hundreds of billions. But von der Leyen had fundamentally misread who she was dealing with. Musk wasn't operating as a traditional CEO anymore. He was operating as the technological extension of Donald Trump's Arctic strategy. And Trump had made Greenland the centerpiece of his second-term foreign policy for one specific reason. Greenland sits on top of the largest known deposits of rare earth minerals on the planet. Neodymium, praseodymium, terbium, the exact materials that every single Tesla vehicle requires, the exact materials that SpaceX rockets depend on, the exact materials that Starlink satellites cannot function without. China currently controls 90% of global rare earth production, and Trump's entire economic strategy revolves around breaking that monopoly. Greenland was the key, and Musk needed that key more desperately than anyone in the world understood. The timeline of what happened is critical to understanding how this spiraled so catastrophically out of control. On December 8, 2025, Donald Trump held a private meeting in Mar-a-Lago with Elon Musk and the Danish ambassador to the United States. The meeting was not publicized. No press was allowed. But according to later leaks from inside the State Department, Trump made a direct offer. If Denmark would agree to negotiate the transfer of mineral extraction rights in Greenland to American companies, specifically to Musk's constellation of businesses, the United States would guarantee Denmark's security, would provide advanced military technology, and would ensure that Denmark received the percentage of all rare earth profits in perpetuity. It was not a request to buy Greenland outright. It was a resource extraction deal dressed up in diplomatic language. Denmark's prime minister initially seemed open to discussions, but then the European Commission intervened. Von der Leyen called an emergency meeting of the European Council and made her position absolutely clear. Greenland's resources were European resources. Denmark was an EU member state. Any deal involving Greenland required EU approval, and the EU would not allow American corporations to extract European mineral wealth without European control over the process. She believed she was protecting European sovereignty. She was actually declaring war on the most dangerous combination of power in modern history. Trump's willingness to use American state power for corporate interests and Musk's willingness to destroy anything that stood between him and his supply chain security. Musk's response came faster than anyone expected. On January 12, 2026, at a Tesla shareholder meeting, Musk made a statement that most analysts dismissed as typical Musk bravado. He said, "Europe has a choice to make. You can either be part of the future of sustainable technology and space exploration, or you can cling to bureaucratic control and watch as the rest of the world leaves you behind. If Europe chooses to block access to the resources that will power the next century of human progress, then Europe will not have access to the technologies that those resources create." It sounded like a standard tech billionaire threat, empty posturing designed to pressure politicians. But Musk had already put the plan in motion. 3 days later, on January 15th, von der Leyen held a press conference in Brussels and issued what she thought was a definitive statement. The European Union will not be intimidated by corporate threats. Greenland's future will be decided by Greenland, by Denmark, and by the European Union, not by American billionaires seeking to exploit our natural resources. The rare earth deposits in Greenland are a European asset, and they will be developed according to European environmental standards and European economic interests. Any attempt to circumvent EU authority on this matter will be met with the full regulatory power of the Commission. The statement was meant to project strength. It projected weakness. Because within 6 hours of that press conference, Musk sent an encrypted message to his core leadership team across X, Tesla, SpaceX, Starlink, and Neuralink. The message contained 2 words: execute severance. What happened next unfolded with a precision that could only have been planned months in advance. At 11:47 p.m. Central European Time on January 15th, every user in the European Union received an identical notification on their device due to irreconcilable differences with European regulatory authorities regarding resource access and digital sovereignty. X will cease all operations in the European Union effective January 17th at midnight CCT. All user data will be archived and access will be permanently terminated. This decision is final and irreversible. The notification stayed on screen for exactly 30 seconds, and then it disappeared. But screenshots spread across every other social media platform within minutes. Panic began immediately. Journalists who relied on X for breaking news started looking for alternatives that didn't exist. Politicians who used X to communicate with constituents suddenly faced a communication blackout. Activists who had built entire movements on the platform watched years of organizing evaporate. Businesses that used X for customer service and marketing scrambled to find replacement platforms. And the European Commission, which had been so confident in its authority, suddenly realized that they had no mechanism to stop this. They could find X, but X was leaving. They could threaten legal action, but against what? A company that was voluntarily withdrawing from the market. They had built an entire regulatory framework based on the assumption that companies needed Europe more than Europe needed companies. That assumption had just been shattered. Then came the second wave. At 2:30 a.m. CCT on January 16th, Starlink users across Europe began experiencing service disruptions. At first, it seemed like technical glitches. Connections dropped for a few seconds, then returned. But by 4 a.m., entire regions were going dark. Rural Ireland lost connectivity. Remote regions of Norway went offline. Fishing fleets in the North Atlantic lost their communication systems. And then at 6 a.m. exactly, every single Starlink terminal in the European Union received a firmware update that bricked the device permanently. Millions of Europeans who had relied on Starlink because traditional internet infrastructure didn't reach their locations woke up to find themselves completely cut off from the digital world. No warning, no transition period, just immediate total disconnection. The European Space Agency issued an emergency statement saying they were investigating potential interference with satellite communications, but there was no interference. This was intentional shutdown. Musk had designed Starlink with a kill switch specifically for this scenario, and he had just activated it across an entire continent. The message was unmistakable. If Europe would not negotiate on Greenland, then Europe would experience what it meant to be isolated from the technological infrastructure that Musk controlled. And Musk controlled more infrastructure than most people realized. Von der Leyen convened an emergency meeting of the European Commission at 7 a.m. on January 16th. The meeting was supposed to be calm and strategic. It was neither. According to leaked audio that later surfaced, the room was in chaos. Commissioners were shouting over each other. The French representative demanded immediate retaliation through economic sanctions. The German representative warned that sanctions would escalate the situation beyond control. The Italian representative pointed out that Italy's southern regions had become completely dependent on Starlink and were now facing a humanitarian crisis. The Polish representative stated bluntly that Poland would negotiate directly with Musk if the Commission didn't act immediately. Van der Leyen tried to maintain order, but her authority was crumbling in real time. She had promised that the Commission could handle American corporate pressure. She had promised that European regulatory power was stronger than any individual company.
So hello guys, welcome back. And again I sit up. Today's market crazy, bro. Today's very bad for trading. Forex trading, it's all about stress. That's why I use Quatex. Quatex is best. So I no, यहाँ सेलिंग का प्लान करते हैं। ये देखो, ये वाली कैंडल जो है ना, ये रेड बनेगी, बननी तो चाहिए रेड। देखते हैं। मार्केट में फ्लक्चुएशन बहुत है, देख रहे हो, फ्लक्चुएशन एकदम से कैंडल ऊपर जा रही है, नीचे आ रही है, ऊपर जा रही है, नीचे आ रही है। पहली ट्रेड हमारी लॉस होती हुई। मार्केट इतना गंदा है ना भाई, ट्रेड भी नहीं ले सकते। गलती से एक ट्रेड और ले ली गाइस। इसको ग्रीन बनाना चाहिए भाई, ग्रीन बनाना चाहिए ये बात। ये हुई ना बात लाडले। Okay guys, today is over.